It's your turn to be the general manager. Do you want the Las Vegas Raiders to draft Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud? Let me know down in the comments section by typing D for draft or P for pass. Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report. And coming up here on today's show, we're going to be looking at a mock draft reaction. Before we get into all of that, we are presented by Panda Subs, and I'm trying to get into better shape this season, especially after some of the crazy watch parties that we have done on this show. You can save 25% off by going to pandasubs.com. Remember to use code Raiders. It's going to be in the comments and in the description of today's video. So what are we talking about here on the Raiders Report? The Athletic released a mock draft, and they had the Las Vegas Raiders trading up with the Arizona Cardinals at pick number 3 to take quarterback C.J. Stroud. I'm going to do my best here to show you my reaction to the trade in terms of what the Athletic believes it would cost the Raiders to move up to number 3. I'll also give you the overall projection and then some more C.J. Stroud analysis from me personally and then other trusted sources out there like PFF. So here we go. The Athletic on the Raiders trading up for Stroud. The price to jump Indianapolis and snag the next best quarterback on the list, at least the way I see it, that's C.J. Stroud. It's going to be expensive. The Raiders have enough to make that work, though. They're probably overpaying here, but even after giving up these picks, the Raiders still would have a 3rd-round pick and a 4th-round pick and 5 selections on day 3. They'd also have a new franchise quarterback. Now, I agree in terms of that I think it's going to be expensive. I'll say this, though. This is actually not expensive. If you want a good understanding of how much draft picks cost, you can go on Google. You can look up the NFL trade value chart, which kind of illustrates how much NFL teams believe each pick is worth. When you look at the NFL trade value chart, this is a clear win for the Raiders. Are you moving up to number 3? And sure, giving up your 2nd-round pick stings. Giving up both your 5th-round picks stink. I will also admit, the Athletic, they have already added the compensatory picks, which still have yet to be released, but that's why it's 142 and 145. But realistically, I agree, it's going to be expensive. I disagree if the Athletic thinks that this is expensive to move up to number 3. But now I want to know from the nation out there, who wins this trade? If you think it's the Las Vegas Raiders, then type a Raiders down in the comments. If you started the video off spamming Raiders, hey, shout out to you. You're a real one. Give me an LV or something that way I know what you're talking about. If you think the Arizona Cardinals won this deal, that's cool. Just tell me at least why down below. This is a clear win for the Raiders considering how this mock draft went. And considering that I actually think they got off with a pretty good deal. If you were to tell me, Mitch, the Raiders are moving up to number 3, jumping the Indianapolis Colts when we all know they're also looking at a quarterback, you're going to be happy with the way that this one went down. In terms of how much I think it would end up costing, I think that there is a real scenario when you look at the trade value chart that it would cost you your 1st, your 2nd, and your 3rd-round pick to be able to get up to number 3. So when you look at the way that the first 4 picks fell, we were joking, Jeremy and I, before the show started, like this would be worst-case scenario for the Chicago Bears if nobody wanted to trade up to number 1, and then 3 quarterbacks go back-to-back-to-back. Bryce Young is my number 1 quarterback. C.J. Stroud is my number 2 quarterback. Will Levis from Kentucky is my number 3. But if I'm being real with y'all, the only 2 quarterbacks that I have is legit like top 20 grades are Stroud and Young. I do think Will Levis and I do think Anthony Richardson could end up taken in the top 15, top 10 pick shit because of their upside. I wouldn't take Richardson in the 1st round, and I wouldn't take Will Levis in the top 20 picks. Now, if you want more Raiders analysis, if you want more NFL draft content, we got free agency right around the corner, of course. If any breaking news happens around Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, join the Raiders Report family. Subscribe. I always say, give me a week. If you like the show after a week, stay subbed. If not, you can go elsewhere for your content. No harm here. So when we're talking about the 3 quarterbacks that were drafted in the top 4, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and Will Levis, let's look at some of their numbers here from last season. Bryce Young on the Alabama Crimson Tide, 64.5% completion percentage, 3,328 yards, 32 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Stroud from Ohio State, 66.3% completion percentage, 3,688 yards, 41 touchdowns, 6 INTs. And then there's Will Levis, 65.4, 2,406, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Some of y'all are probably looking at that graphic and being like, Mitch, why the hell is Will Levis even in this discussion with numbers like that? I would encourage you to go look at Josh Allen's numbers from his final year at Wyoming because realistically, they're pretty bad. 56.3% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,812 yards. The reason why Will Levis will be talked about the way that he is, it's the upside. Every single NFL team is going to look at him and say, we might be able to turn him into the next Josh Allen. Teams are going to look at C.J. Stroud and they're going to be like, man, we could potentially turn him. I've seen a lot of comps to Justin Herbert. I'm not necessarily 100% on board with that, but the arm talent does remind me very similar of a young man in Justin Herbert. So since those are the top 3 quarterbacks in this year's class, who's your favorite QB prospect? It doesn't have to be the best one. Doesn't have to be Bryce Young. Maybe it's C.J. Stroud. I know a lot of people, they like Hendon Hooker. He's a good player. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is like my sleeper in the 6th round. If he's still on the board, he's athletic enough. Who is your favorite quarterback prospect? Now, the more and more tape I've continued to watch on Stroud, I've said for a long time that I believe he is the most likely quarterback if the Raiders decide to take one coming up here in the 2023 NFL Draft. I was also told by a very good source, which I've said multiple times on the show, Dave Ziegler likes Stroud. My scouting report on him when I sat down and I watched the film, he's got the size of your prototypical NFL quarterback. His arm strength, it's there. The accuracy, it's there. All of it, you will need to be great in the NFL. He is a pocket passer, though he's really pretty athletic for being somebody who I actually don't think moves that well outside of the pocket. As soon as he does get outside of the pocket or if plays start to break down, he crumbles. So if you're going to have C.J. Stroud, you better have a good offensive line, and you better have a lot of good pieces around him because that's what he had at Ohio State. And there's a lot of people out there that are afraid to take Ohio State quarterbacks because of the system is just so QB-friendly, and we've seen so many quarterbacks from the Buckeyes come to the NFL, and they struggle because, well, the NFL is a lot more challenging than playing in the Big Ten. This is what PFF had to say on Stroud in terms of what this young man does well. In a clean pocket, Stroud is arguably the best quarterback in the country. If he has time to throw, he's going to dial in and pick apart a defense. Stroud has excellent vision and sees the field better than almost anybody. He does a great job of finding his open receivers and delivering a strike to any location. It helps that he has the best offensive line and receiving core in college football. However, he still has to make the accurate throw, which he rarely fails to do. He's big, strong, and possesses excellent arm talent, which is exactly what teams are looking for in a professional quarterback. Stroud has been the beneficiary of some phenomenal Ohio State teams, but he is still the one leading the charge and commanding the offense. I agree with a lot of the stuff that PFF had to say there, and as you can see, a lot of it lines up with some of the stuff that I watched on film, and when you see film line up, it's good. The best game that I saw Stroud play, hands down, is the Georgia game. Like, that quarterback that played against Georgia, he's worth taking number 1 overall. I'd say out of all the tape that I watched on Stroud, the game that scares me the most is the game he had against Rutgers. Go check it out because the game against Rutgers is one where you're like, you see the upside, but you also see the downside. I wouldn't be able to do today's show, or at least keep it free, if it wasn't for our awesome sponsor, Panda Sups. I love the protein that these guys have, and I want you to at least try it. It's the best tasting protein. I will swear on that. I have been using it for over 2 years now. Use code Raiders, 25% off at pandasups.com, and they actually just dropped 2 new flavors, which I encourage you to try. Cookies and cream. I mean, I don't know about y'all. Growing up as a kid, I love dunking a nice little Chips Ahoy cookie into a glass of milk. Tastes the exact same, and there's actually chunks of cookie inside the protein. The strawberry and cream, it's really delicious. There's even freeze-dried strawberries in the protein. I love, personally, kind of like Nesquik strawberry milk. It's like that on steroids, but, no steroids in Panda Subs. Go to pandasups.com, code Raiders, to save 25% off. So the next thing that we're going to be talking here about Stroud is a lot of times when people decide to talk about a certain player, they only mention the good. Why? Because people like to look at glass half full. At least I think NFL draft analysts do. But we do still got to talk about the bad. This is what PFF had to say on C.J. Stroud's struggles in terms of being a quarterback. Okay. The same could be said for most quarterbacks when facing pressure, but Stroud is particularly bad when the pocket collapses. He ranks 97th in PFF grade out of 144 qualifying quarterbacks when under pressure. This is definitely an area he needs to improve on. Stroud is somewhat of a statue back there in the pocket and rarely ever breaks out to scramble. It's weird because he was touted as a dual-threat quarterback when entering college, but he never really used his legs much during the time at Ohio State. He may have to uncork that at the next level, and he is sure to be under pressure for more in the NFL than he has ever been at Ohio State. I mean, that's just a fact, right? But the thing is, that's how a lot of Ohio State quarterbacks have been. I mean, you go back and you look at a lot of OSU QBs, they look really good in college. Justin Fields, he's done a good job in the NFL, but definitely not the passer some people thought he was. Dwayne Haskins, RIP, another guy, definitely wasn't worth the pick. I mean, you just go down the list of quarterbacks, and it hasn't really worked out. No, not Joe Burrow, Jeremy. But, so let's just say this deal ends up going down, okay? These would be the remaining picks, and again, the Raiders would actually have more picks because what you're hoping is the comp picks go down. We still don't know the comp picks. When I showed you the trade earlier, they already had the compensatory picks. That's a tough word to say. The Raiders are going to get 2 more, though, so you're going to be able to add 2 more here. And then if you do get something in a Derek Carr trade, well, then that's even more picks. All I'm saying is this. If the Raiders were to only have these picks and you were able to find your franchise quarterback, it's worth it. But that is taking a risk because you never know. Nothing is guaranteed. And then the other thing that I'll sit up here and say is, if you can trade up picks for Stroud, the Raiders and Ziegler, they got a real decision to make. Do you give up those picks to get C.J. Stroud, or would you rather give up those type of picks to get a veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers? That's why I said be the GM a little bit earlier on. If you made it this far in the video, spam RO4L down in the comments. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day, and go Raiders.